Now, it is a budget for those with a pension or money in the bank, as the Chancellor promised to share the benefits of Britain's economic recovery with makers, doers and savers. In this, his fifth budget, the penultimate before the general election, George Osborne set out radical reforms to retirement income and trebled the allowance on tax-efficient ISAs. In the biggest changes, pensioners will have much more control of their own retirement money, as they won't have to buy an annuity. Savers will be allowed to stash up to £15,000 in ISAs, whilst the 10p starting tax rate from savings income is also abolished. The personal tax allowance will also rise to £10,500 next year, and the duty on bingo is being slashed in half to 10%. Our political editor Gary Gibbon reports now on a recovery budget.
In there.
The Chancellor certainly thought so. Pension reform, a break-up of the tight rules that currently prevent you cashing in your pension savings. On top of that, there was help for savers. Music to the ears of older voters, he hopes, quite a number of whom happen to have deserted the Tories recently for UKIP.
Today, support for savers is at the centre of this budget.
The Chancellor hopes he can tap into resentment against forced annuities, compulsory pension accounts that ration your access to the savings pot, in which many believe pay puny interest.
Pensioners will have complete freedom to draw down as much or as little of their pension pot as they want, any time they want. No caps, no drawdown limits. Let me be clear, no one will have to buy an annuity.
There have been worries that if you allow people to do that, they'll take a lot of big lump sums to start with, they'll go on a world cruise, and then they'll end up with very little money when they're rather older, when they hit 90, 80 or 90 or even 100, as more and more people are doing. What an annuity gives you is certainty about that. What we will have now is people giving people the chance to make their own mistakes.
One source close to the Chancellor said George Osborne wants to be remembered as the man who liberalised the pensions market. He also, of course, wants to attract older voters. And the source said he couldn't quite believe his luck when the sums came back from the Treasury suggesting just how much money this reform could raise, with pensioners drawing down on their reserves earlier than they might have done. But the Office for Budget Responsibility says in the longer term, just what this will bring in terms of tax receipts is subject to considerable uncertainty. That means they haven't got a clue. George Osborne ticked off a whole series of wish list requests from business. He'd protect heavier industry from green levies, double the investment allowance in corporation tax, and on exports, a suggestion that prime ministerial trade missions weren't enough. The government would provide much better finance deals for exporters.
I am determined that our country is going to outcompete, outsmart and outdo the rest of the world.
Outside, Nick Clegg mustered his MPs to try and get a share of the publicity for raising the tax threshold to £10,500 from next April. Unfortunately, someone else wanted a share of the moment.
Well, I think Liberal Democrats have every reason to be proud of this policy. Indeed, I led it in the general election. I'm delighted to see that it's now being delivered in government.
In the Commons, Ed Balls gestured across to Vince Cable to give Eric Pickles a nudge. The Community Secretary looked like he'd fallen fast asleep.
With the help of the British people, we're turning our country around. We're building a resilient economy. This is a budget for the makers, the doers and the savers, and I commend it to the House.
The Chancellor unveiled improved growth figures, insisted the plan was working, but the job was not yet done. The Labour leader rehearsed his lines for the general election campaign.
Living standards down, month after month, year after year. 2011, living standards down. 2012, living standards down. 2013, living standards down. And since the election, working people's living standards, £1,600 a year down.
As for the budget itself, Labour said it could vote for big sections of it, even the cap on much of the welfare budget that George Osborne carefully laid as a trap. Ed Miliband says the recovery's skewed, benefiting those already well off. George Osborne insists real income growth will come. And to take your mind off it while you wait, here's improved savings, bigger bingo prizes, and a penny off a pint of beer.